Hey, I'm Alex Rackle from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Pioneer Rails from Janda Games. Pioneer Rails is a 1 to 100 sort of player count game of roll and write, of trying to craft your rails as you draw cards, craft poker hands, and slowly make your way through the Wild West over here. This is a prototype, rules and components subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. But with that said, the 1 to 100 sort of is this theoretically, I believe it says 1 to 100, somewhere, maybe, but this game, you'd have to modify the first player rules and small things like that. In theory, it'd be 1 to 100, but you would only have a first turn once in the game. I don't know exactly how that would play out. The game would work, but it might require balancing around that player count. But that said, this is a roll and write game. It's a classic roll and write game in the sense that across four rounds of play, every round you're going to be drawing 3 cards, picking 1 card, and selecting that. So effectively, you're going to have 20 card plays in the game. Basically, a turn sequence is you go ahead, you reveal 3 cards, and then you go ahead and have, let's go ahead and place these the right orientation, and then you're going to have from there, a player is going to go ahead, the first player is going to pick one of these cards, so perhaps they pick the king, that is gone, the other players can pick from the remaining cards, all the other players can pick from the remaining cards, hence the 1 to 100 player count, and then you're going to use that card both to go ahead and craft a poker hand, but as well as that to slowly draw rails around the board to accomplish a variety of goals, score points, and to be mindful of the 3 scoring goals in the game. That's the core idea of the game. You're going to do that 5 times, that's the constants a round, and then 4 rounds is the entire game. That's the high level. Draw 3 cards, captain or leader, first player picks 1, other players pick from those remaining, do that 20 total times, and that's going to be the game. Now, a few things going from here. First of all, we have a nice little player mat over here. Completely unnecessary. It's nice, it's large, it does look great, but it's very nice and very large for what is effectively a few cards on the table. So to that end, as we play through this, I'm just going to cover it so you can best see the board over here. But past that, let's go ahead and show you how that plays out. Let's pretend I was the captain here and I chose the king. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead with my marker over here and I'm going to write down a little K in this box over here, because I'm slowly but surely across the next 5 rounds going to be creating a bit of a poker hand. From there, you can either have 2 of a kind is going to be worth a point, 2 pairs worth 2 points, 3 of a kind is 3 points, a full house is 4 points, a straight is 5 points, and 4 of a kind is 6 points. And you have the possibility of doubling that too, depending on what you do on your board. So effectively, you already can score as much as 12 points a hand across 4 rounds, 48 points alone just from your poker hands. If you score 48 points in your poker hands, give me a call, because that is a very impressive score. But you're going to take that king, you're going to mark it in your box, but then you're going to draw 3 rails. And you're going to draw 3 rails specifically from this little area here, because you have to be mindful of the suit as well as the number. The number determines your poker hand, but the suit is going to determine where you're going on the board. In my case, I want to go for, you know what, let's go ahead and go big or go home. I'm going to try to go ahead and get those doublings, which means I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Now, the way when you draw rails in the game, I just drew out some rails over here, and now slowly moving across down over here. There's 3 lines. Now, there's going to be a few things you need to be mindful as you go through the game, but before we're mindful as to why you're doing things, the first thing to note is how you do things. When you earn rails, you have to go from that suit, and you have to continue from the edge of a rail or from one of the other 6 sides. So, for example, if I draw another club, the next time I draw a club, let's go ahead and draw 3 cards. Let's see if I can get a club over here. There we go, there we go. Nope, no clubs. So, you know what? Let's go ahead and show you the new hand. I'm going to go ahead and work my way towards that straight over there. So I'm going to take the 10 actually, because I'm mindful that 2 10s are already gone, and there's 4 of each kind in this suit. And with 2 10s gone, I'm going to want that 10 if I want to guarantee my hand towards a full of 4 towards a straight. So I'm going to throw that 10 into my hand, and I'm going to go ahead and mark down from diamonds. Now this is where I'm going to show you how it plays out if I do want to split up into different rails, because I could, for instance, go 1 down over here, crafting 1 rail, and then I could continue outwards there, or I can start new branching lines. I could start new branching lines across the whole area over there. And in fact, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and start making my way towards, you know, we're going to move our way down here and then make our way towards this mine over here. So we now have 2 branching lines from the diamond over there. Now, why are you doing all this? You're going through the game, across a round of play, you're going to have 5 cards drafted, which means a total of 5 cards and 15 lines drawn across the board, potentially more as you cash in bonuses. But why? What's the ultimate goal? You're building rails. So what? How do you score? Well, first of all, we noted how you score for poker hands, but you score for a bunch of things as you go through the game, depending on the edges you mark. You see, many buildings are going to have certain numbers in them that illustrate that needs that many markings. So, for example, if we draw 1 line along the edge of a mine, we can mark off the mine however you choose to do so. I usually scribble that in, and I can go ahead and circle one of these over here, showing that I've now gotten a gold nugget. Now, every building is going to be a bit different. So, for example, this poker hand building down here that I was working my way towards, I want to slowly go down over here and go ahead and draw 2 over there. And once I've drawn 2 lines, Because that number is a 2, that means it needs 2 of its 6 edges to be filled in. And now that I've done so, I'm going to go ahead and circle this and get a doubling. There's going to be a few of those buildings across the board, and if you score them in, you unlock the next doubling. There's more on the board than you need to. There's, I believe, 6 on the board if I'm not mistaken, and you don't need all 6. You're only ever going to need a maximum of 4 of them. So just pick and choose. Don't worry, there's plenty to go for. You will have plenty of areas to try to focus your attention on. You see, you may notice over here that this cattle over here didn't get a line at all, and the reason for that is because right now this cattle currently is able to track a line down to this cattle, which means it's not secluded. Once a cattle is completely secluded, so for example, if we go ahead and mark there, now this cattle is blocked by the river from any other cattle on the board, and we can go ahead and mark it off again however you want to do so, and circle a cattle. Cattle are going to score in the game based on having as many secluded areas of cattle in the board. Mines want a single line. Those doubling for your salons over there are going to just want 2 edges. When you go ahead and mark a sheriff little fort over here, you have to get 4 lines around the edge of a fort. But once you have that 4th line around a fort, you're going to circle the next fort, and you can get 4, 12, or 24 points depending on how many of those you've marked in the game. You're also going to have these rails over here. Once you have 3 lines along a rail, now again, you can't branch over there, but you know what? Let's pretend that we've gone ahead and gone over here and we've gotten to one of these towns. Once you get to a town, you can mark it off, you can circle a town, and then you can cash in towns. You start with 1 to go ahead and mark extra lines on the board, but with breaking the rules at the same time. So for example, whenever you cross off a town, let's go ahead and mark this town off, I'm going to go ahead and draw an extra line, but also branch it from an existing path. That's going to be one of the things you can do. You can draw an existing line across the river, through mountains, you're switching the suit of the cards directly across the middle of a hex, which can be very useful to getting the spot you need. If you just go directly across the hex, it can save you a bunch of lines over there, or branching across. Those are the possible benefits you get when you go ahead and mark an extra line. But once we do that, we go ahead and mark across 3 rails. These rails over here will earn you these, which are a multiplier for your largest network of towns in one centralized system that all connects together, multiplied by 3, 5, or 7, depending on how many rails you have. If you have 4 towns and a times 7, that's going to be 28 points at the end of the game. So we've so far covered the gold nuggets. Each gold nugget is going to be worth a point. You want to cross through mines. That's going to give you the number of points of the gold nuggets you have. Whenever you cross a bank, banks are an interesting one. When you completely get 3 edges on a bank, you're going to go ahead and sell gold nuggets. You'll cross off gold nuggets. You still score the points for them, but you sell those for their value. You can do 1 to 4 gold nuggets, crossing them off and selling them for the first time, a multiplier of 1, the second time a multiplier of 2, and the third time a multiplier of 3. Basically, you can turn 4 gold nuggets into 12 points in that third multiplier while still keeping the original 4 points for those gold nuggets. You can really make your gold nuggets worth a lot if you go for a nice hodgepodge of gold nuggets, of mines, and banks in the game, but timing and how you trade them in is everything. Then over here, we covered the forts over here. You get 4, 12, or 24 points, depending on the rightmost. Your cattle get increasingly, progressively more and more points. As you cross off and seclude more cattle, and yes, it gets harder and harder as you go. Well, once you get to the end, it gets a little easier. But as you mark off and seclude your cattle, you can get as much as 40 points for your cattle, but it is a lot of work to do so. You do need to spend time on that. And then the towns you already mentioned are going to be worth a point each, but you can cross them off, still scoring that point, but getting that extra mark over there. Past that, the first person to achieve certain goals, so for example, this is the first person to build a fort. These are people who are building tracks through mountains, tracks across the river. You can get 10 points for the first person to do so, and 5 points for the second and third and 99th person to do so as you go through it there. That is basically Pioneer Rails. You're going to be having 4 rounds of play. Each round consists of 5 cards. Each card consists of one of your 5 hands of poker, one of your 5 cards and a hand of poker, as well as drawing 3 lines on the board. For the most part, you're going to be drawing your 3 lines trying to connect networks. Lines cannot bridge or divide, and they end at a town. Once you get to a town, you cannot extend, but that's how you combine other towns. You go ahead and mark through this, you cross the river. When you get to a town, that's how you create a network between the different suits on the board, and you're trying to do all that while trying to be mindful of all the scoring objectives so that you can score as many points in this fairly intricate wild west of drawing and rolling. Not rolling, there's no rolling in this game. This is a flip and right. This is barely a flip and right. It's a flip and right. That's what it is. That is going to be Pioneer Rails. And before we dive into the review, there's a bunch of other things in the game. There's a bunch of modules of using jokers, of using other cards. There's other maps as well. You can go ahead and have other maps that have small little rules adjustments in them to keep the experience fresh and not make it so that it's not always the same stale game. And I believe in the crowdfunding campaign, I believe there are plans to have a bunch of things. I don't know exactly what, so I won't say, but more maps, more stuff, modules, and all of that. But this review is focused purely on the base game as we go through it, which brings us to the review, starting off with ease of play. Game is fairly easy to dive into. Rulebook was not the easiest to go through. There's a lot of content and it wasn't formatted the best, but that's all prototype issue. The game itself is actually fairly easy to understand. It's just mostly formatting stuff and trying to get past badly printed stuff in the game. But again, those are all not issues you should have to deal with. I usually call them out just in case, but I don't believe those are issues you're going to have to address. As far as playtime, it's going to run you around 45 minutes for the game. I don't know what the box says, but around 45 minutes for the game, at least in our experience. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting with what I like, which is there's a lot to do in this game. This is another solid roll-and-write game, and it's not so much cascading chaining bonuses. There's different kinds of roll-and-writes, different kinds of puzzles going on. Some of them are more route building, some of them are cascading bonuses, and I like different ones in different ways depending on what they do. This is less of the cascading bonuses. There's a little bit of it as you cash in your towns, trying to get extra movement out of it, but for the most part, it's not so much about cascading, I do this, that will then trigger this, and then unlock that, and then do that. More so, it's about the general exploration of the board. You're trying to be mindful of your poker hand as you build out towards that, but you're also trying to be mindful of how you explore this map, where you choose to go, what areas are going to pay off the most, where you want to double down versus where you want to spread out your points. Getting all those cattle can be a lot of points, but it also can be a lot of work. If you're not careful with what you pursue and how aggressively you pursue those, if you overreach and you're too confident about how much stuff you're going to get done before the end of the game, well, then you're going to crash and burn. The player who's able to plan around what won't work perfectly, what will work in your favor, and trying to balance all of that to get you that ideal score, that player is going to do best in this game, being mindful of both the scoring and not overreaching as they go through it. Closing in on those goals are going to give you more variability to what you try to pursue. You're not purely fixating on what this map does, but your plans might change depending on the board you're playing on, depending on what goals are in play, depending on the cards that come out. You always have to pivot and adjust to an extent to try to maximize both your scoring hand as well as the board, as well as the goals, and of course the unique map you're playing on, and then of course your desire to explore new strategies, which to me is one of the fun aspects of the genre, and to me this game does give me a lot of room to explore new strategies. There's not just the aspect of going down different routes of mines versus cattle versus, you know, the sheriff power, the forts or whatnot, but there's also the combination therein. What combination of things are you able to do? Can you get, you know, 12 towns times a 7 multiplier for a whole chunk of points if you aggressively pursue that one thing, or is it better to split up a little bit and do other things along the way because that will net you more points? There's a lot of ways to break up your pathways and explore, and there's a lot of replayability because you cannot get anywhere near enough done in this game as you go through it. Which brings me to things I don't like, which is you cannot get anywhere near enough done in this game as you go through it. I find myself in this game, I find myself frequently wanting to get done like 3 times as much as I'm actually able to as I draw lines across the map over here. You get your rails done, but there's a ton of lines to build, and you're only getting around 60, well 60 in the pure math of it, but then plus your little towns over here, so maybe 60 to 70 spots on the board are going to be filled in, and which areas you choose to pursue is going to be everything. You cannot get close to all the stuff you want, which means you have to go ahead and choose, which is a good thing and a bad thing, as I just mentioned over there, but it gives you a lot of stuff that you want to pursue as you go through it. Additionally, this doubles, I'd say that the general presentation over here has a slight problem in the sense that so far, and this might be a prototype thing, I don't think so, but we'll see, but I found so far in our games that this kind of falls into one of 2 camps. You either kind of need a more permanent marker to draw on the board, in which case it flows through to the other side of the sheet, and each sheet is single use, or you use a thinner pen or pencil, in which case you can barely see it on the sheet itself. You can't see it on the other side, but you can barely see it on the sheet itself. I've yet to find a good compromise that makes your impact on the board feel seen, but not seen on the other side as you flip it over. Well, this is the full pad over here. But that's going to be a small little nitpick. Again, prototype, so that may or may not be an issue as you go through it. But overall, it's not so much those things I don't like over here, but rather just at the end of the day, the game gives me a lot of stuff to explore. I want to get more done, but then also it doesn't have that cascading aspect, which is something I do enjoy in games, of trying to find different ways that everything interweaves. This doesn't have that interweaving, it just has that sense of exploration, which is, I guess, fit for the Wild Wild West. As far as I can see others not liking, first of all, the poker hands very much do come down to the luck of the draw. You're going to be going through this deck every single round, and you could make certain decisions around which cards have come out. Like, as I took that 10 because I wanted to go for a straight, and those 2 10s are gone, which means if I don't take this 10, there's only one more chance left. There's definitely going to be decisions you make along the way that improve your odds of getting the hand you want, but at the end of the day, especially with that first player aspect, and especially if 2 players are going for the same hand and you both need a queen and a queen comes out and the captain or the first player takes the queen, the poker hands do to a certain extent come down to luck of the draw, which can be a big deal because it's not a small shift to go from a doubled, 6-point hand to, well, the doubled 5-point hand, going for a straight, times 2 is going to be 10 points versus possibly ending up with just doubles instead for a mere 2 points. That 8-point swing can be the difference between winning and losing as you go through the game. So while the rest of the game I think has a good degree of, it's kind of your decision of how you're going to play it and there's a lot of mitigation around it, I find the poker hands very much do come down to make it or break it in the game, and that's very much luck of the draw. Additionally, the game does suffer from the fact that it's the kind of game system that can become stale as you figure out that perfect pathway. Now, I'm nowhere near there yet by any means, but as you explore this more, it's the kind of system that you're like, oh, well, the efficient way to do things on this map is to go that way, this way, and that way. This kind of system is potentially victim to that. I say potentially because you never really know. It requires a lot more plays to go through it to see that, and the good news is you'll have other maps, and you probably aren't playing the game that much to find yourself in that pathway, and if you are, then at least you're getting your money's worth in the game. As far as final thoughts on Pioneer Rails, I overall very much enjoyed this one. Roll and writes for me tend to fall into one of 3 primary categories. Let's call it 4 categories. There's 4 main categories of roll and writes for me. The first is the kind that simply don't impress. They're fun, I enjoy them. It's rare that I play a roll and write that I don't like to some extent, but some simply don't impress. Some of them are going to be impressive games that I enjoy that have a lot of degrees of areas to explore. That's very much what Pioneer Rails is. The third category are going to be those daisy chaining ones that give you those pinging and you do this to get that, to unlock this, to unlock that. That's less the genre, but it's not a necessary criteria for me to enjoy roll and write. It's just one of the types I enjoy. And then the fourth are going to be the ones that stand out as absolutely incredible, over the top, hardly a roll and write, but more a full game experience. Pioneer Rails is a good game. It gives me a lot of those general senses of exploration. It gives me a reason to dive back in because there's too many different ways that I want to explore things, and the additional maps come with new modules and new ways to explore the game systems, giving you the same core system but with rule changes that keep the system fresh. I like this game. I enjoy it very much. It's a 3.5 out of 5. It's a lot of fun, but also one that doesn't, really dig that mental itch. It's more about the sense of exploration in a good roll and write system that overall delivers a fun experience. If you're looking for other game recommendations, first of all, Flip Town. This game is very reminiscent of Flip Town in terms of giving you a Wild Western experience that you're building out poker hands as you play while also doing other stuff with the cards at the same time. That one is more of a combo chaining one. This one's more of an exploration one, but lots of similarities and overlap. If you like one, I imagine you'll have reasons to like the other. And secondly, if you're looking for another trail exploring game, Trails of Tucana is a solid one that gives you another degree of a map and trying to find pathways and figure out how to connect things as you explore a hex-based Catan-like board as you go through it, and a very solid game that's worth looking into. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.